April. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GBNews, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dewbs & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel. Hello there, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is Dewbs & Co. It is a big day tomorrow then with the spring statement, and many people are not happy with what they are expecting to see. So apparently, to try and sweeten things up a little bit, the Chancellor is set to announce more money for social housing. Will that win you over or not? And listen to this quote, music to my ears. We will doggedly protect the female category, and we'll do whatever is necessary to do it. Yes, yes, yes. I love it. Common sense prevails as the World Athletics introduce mandatory sex testing for females. I like it. Do you? And do you remember that Reform UK commissioned a KC to investigate Rupert Lowe's behaviour? Well, that has concluded, and we'll bring you the outcome. Well, worry not, we've got all of that and lots more for you tonight. And look at who's on my panel to keep me company. I've got Alex Dean, the political consultant, and Matthew Torbett, the former Labour advisor. But before we get stuck in, let's cross live and give you your 6 o'clock news headlines.
Michelle, thank you. I'm Katie Bowen in the GB newsroom. Ukraine and Russia have agreed to a ceasefire in the Black Sea today and to also halt energy infrastructure attacks, with the Ukrainian defence authorities and the Kremlin both confirming those details this afternoon. The Kremlin said that the US and Russia have agreed to develop measures to halt strikes on Russian and Ukrainian energy infrastructure for 30 days. And President Zelensky said that both the ceasefire in the Black Sea and on energy plants is effective immediately. The White House added that Washington would help restore Russia's access to the world market for agricultural and fertiliser exports, and would continue facilitating talks on both sides in a bid towards achieving a sustainable peace. Both parties have concluded that they have agreed to safe passage through the Black Sea, and Number 10 said today that the government is hopeful for progress and that they are following developments closely. A breaking update this evening. Buckingham Palace has announced that the King and Queen's state visit to the Holy See has been postponed by mutual agreement. Medical advice has now suggested that Pope Francis would benefit from, quote, an extended period of rest and recuperation. Their Majesties have sent the Pope their best wishes for his convalescence and say that they look forward to visiting him in the Holy See once he has recovered. King Charles and Queen Camilla will still visit Italy, but there will now be a change to their programme. Also today, the police investigation into the Heathrow substation fire has found no evidence of criminality, the Metropolitan Police has said. The Met said that they are continuing to support other partners, including colleagues from the National Grid and London Fire Brigade, but the officers have found no evidence to suggest that the incident was suspicious in nature. The White House has said that the actions of President Trump's administration have made Houthi terrorists pay. Those comments come amid the fallout of a major US security breach after reporter Jeffrey Goldberg was accidentally included in a group chat where senior US officials discussed conducting airstrikes on Yemen's Iran-backed Houthis. The US president has backed his national security advisor Michael Waltz and labelled journalist Goldberg as a sleazeball after the incident. Goldberg, the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic magazine, which was added to a group, which included US Vice President J.D. Vance and Defence Secretary Pete Hegseth. The UK still has high confidence that the US's operational security measures remain intact, Minister Luke Pollard said this morning, despite the revelations of that major breach. An independent KC has claimed that there is credible evidence of unlawful harassment of 2 women by MP Rupert Lowe and male members of his team. The investigation by Jacqueline Perry KC was launched by Reform UK after they received complaints from 2 women working in Lowe's offices who complained of bullying and unacceptable conduct from men in the team. In her report, Perry concludes there is veracity in the complaints from both women, which amounts to credible evidence. Mr. Lowe has published a statement from his entire current team on X denying allegations of bullying in his office. The statement also reads, "There has never been any bullying. We will all go on the record to say so and have done so already." Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now let's go back to Michelle.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much for that, and hello again, everybody. How are you all tonight? I'm Michelle Dewberry. This is Dewbs & Co with you until 7 o'clock this evening. Alongside me, my panel, Alex Dean, the political consultant, and Matthew Torbett, the former Labour advisor. Welcome back, gents.
Thank you very
much.
much.
I missed you.
Thank you.
I haven't seen you for ages.
I've been on with Miriam a few times, who fills your slot from time to time.
Blimey, yes, she does. Look, I was just saying, I miss you on Dewberry Tavern.
Thank you very much. You have me on a Friday when you are here, and we'll have a pint or two.
You know, Alex Dean, I've given myself the giggles, I need to go up a little bit, sorry. Alex Dean remains the only person on Dewbs & Co at Dewberry Tavern to have necked 2 pints in the space of that session.
Nothing to be proud of. It's not big and it's not clever.
No, it's not, ladies and gents, especially not when you see the kind of booze that I serve. Anyway, look, let's just pick up then, shall we? In fact, actually, no, I need to tell you how to join the conversation. I'm getting myself in all of a tiz-was at the start of this programme, everyone. You join the conversation all the usual ways. Email me, gbviews@gbnews.com. Go to the website, gbnews.com/yoursay. Of course, you can tweet or you can X me. But look, let's start by having a quick look then, shall we, at that story that just ended the headlines there. Reform UK, you followed this story. It's one of the primary things that you often get in touch with me to talk about. Anyway, they put a KC on to investigate some allegations surrounding the MP for Great Yarmouth, Rupert Lowe, and members of his office. Let's cross live to Christopher Hope for the latest. Hello, Christopher.
Hi, Michelle, that's right. Yeah, the report is here in my hand. It's a report done by KC for Reform UK. It's been published this afternoon at 2 p.m. In summary, there are 4 findings in here. I'll go through them very quickly. Viewers and listeners remember, of course, that Rupert Lowe was stripped of the whip by the party on March the 7th. He was accused of physical violence towards Zia Youssef, who's the party chairman. The police are looking into that, so park that. Separate to that, there were claims of harassing 2 members of staff by him or members of his office. And, of course, he gave an interview to our colleague Andrew Pearce for the Daily Mail in which he was rude about Nigel Farage and his leadership. So that's what happened. He's now there on screen there. He's an independent MP called Rupert Lowe, one of the 5 Reform UK MPs elected at the last election. This summary findings are these. They find, according to the KC, there was credible evidence of unlawful harassment of 2 women by both Mr. Lowe and male members of his team. Now, I've gone through each of these claims with Mr. Lowe himself. He says that's absolute rubbish. The second finding is that, contrary to what Rupert Lowe has said in public, one of the women's allegations were made against Mr. Lowe himself rather than his office. He says no to that. The third one is that one of the women received threats from Mr. Lowe who'd take legal action against her if she cooperated with the KC's investigation. That is denied, and Rupert Lowe tells us that that is drivel. And just finally, both women gave their statements to a KC as sworn statements under penalty of perjury. Mr. Lowe has refused to do the same. Now, that is contested. While it is the case that Rupert Lowe had refused to get involved with this KC inquiry, and in fact, it may be that his team had told the KC he wouldn't get involved, we are told that he was planning to respond by tomorrow, the deadline, and I think the KC herself believed that to be the case, although that is disputed by both sides. So as things stand, Mr Lowe had no input into this report, although he says, and he had hoped to add in his view tomorrow by tomorrow's deadline. Stepping back, though, Michelle, these two individuals, Rupert Lowe and Nigel Farage for Reform UK, are nowhere near bridging their gap. The hope might have been the KC report gave a way back in for Rupert Lowe to mend his fences, have that dinner with Nigel Farage and move on together. They're a tiny party, just 4 MPs now. It was 5. The bigger parties are looking at this and just with bemusement, and the people who want to support Reform UK are puzzled and probably saddened by these two big individuals falling out.
Thank you very much for that update, Christopher Herb. Look, I've got to say, Rupert Lowe, of course, he has responded and he says, his words, not mine, that Reform's leadership are deceitful cowards. He says they've put his team through hell in an attempt to smear his reputation. He says it's not how politics should operate, it's dark, dirty and not, he says, the British way of doing things. Alex Dean.
Well, disclaimer first, I've never met Rupert Lowe, but such is the small nature of our legal world, I no longer practice, but I do know the KC who conducted this inquiry, and I respect her. The point I'd make isn't about the individuals, it's about these processes, which really concern me, because the most important thing in our country, for all of us, is the presumption of innocence. And what's happened here is that someone's effectively been said in the public space to have been guilty of effectively criminal offences, harassment and so forth, but through a quasi-judicial standard, which is not conducted in a way that you would normally have someone treated in this way. The KC doesn't have the power to compel evidence or to interview people as the police would do. You don't have the accused cautioned. They're not charged. You don't have a trial which has the burden upon the Crown to prove guilt beyond reasonable doubt. So you don't have any of the processes by which someone would normally have their name, and a criminal conviction, by which somebody would have their name traduced in this way and they'd be convicted and be held appropriately responsible for these actions. Effectively, on the balance of probability, someone says, through the course of a process you arrange yourself, that you've done something to a criminal standard. And I find that deeply disquieting. And it's not a point about reform. Anyone who does this, I think, should think twice about it. It's not about the individuals. I don't know Rupert Lowe from a bar of soap. We should really think twice about having these kinds of processes in our civic life, because it's corrosive of our traditional standards.
Matt?
Yeah, I think I would echo concerns over processes from a sort of former parliamentary staff member point of view. We have proper processes in Parliament if you want to put in a complaint about the member you work for. And I understand that the two complainants have put in complaints to the ICGS, which is the Independent Complaints and Grievance Service in Parliament. I've never known a political party to get an independent KC involved.
That's the right avenue. If you don't want to do something short of the criminal law, the right avenue is the parliamentary authorities, and that's not what's happened here.
Exactly.
Yeah, but hold on, because obviously they disagree with you. If Reform UK was sitting here now, they'd say, well, we do think it was the right avenue, the right approach, and that's why we've done it.
I suppose I would say why. I mean, there's a reason why there are processes, and through these processes we've seen MPs being found guilty of bullying or potential harassment, all sorts of manner of things in the past, of all parties. And that's why I think it's potentially looks a bit smelly, really, in the fact of the late complaints. I think it's a bit unedifying on both sides, and there's been a little political naivety on both sides, really. But I will refrain from entering myself into Reform's sort of internal chaos, if you will.
I don't think people should go off and conduct their own quasi-judicial inquiries on the bollock of their own. That's my point.
Yeah.
Well, look, do you know what? You can all have the final say on that. I did feel it important to bring you that update on that situation, because I know it's something, of course, that we've followed, and it's something that a lot of you get in touch with me about. I've got to say, I do know, to some degree, most of the people involved in the situation. I just find it all tragic, really, because I know that for many of you watching, this was your answer, Reform UK, or what you were actually waiting for, and I do hope that it all resolves itself. Look, we've got a lot to talk about after the break. And I'm going to read you a text message from Matt Torbett's dad. Don't worry, there's nothing untoward going on between me and Mr. Torbett. He's not texting me. He's been texting Matthew, and you shared this tweet publicly, and I think that this will resonate with many of you. He says, I'm assuming it's Mr. Torbett, is that right? Yeah. So Mr. Torbett says to his son, what kind of rough age is your dad?
Nearly 63.
Right, so we've got a 63-year-old chap, and he's reflecting to his son, Matt, on this panel today. He says, just been reflecting, Matt, what a shambles this country is in. Conservatives were hopeless, and now Labour are hopeless. They both have a go at each other, but they are a shambles, both of them. I've worked since I was 16, and I've never worked so hard and been so worse off than I am now. And he ends by saying, it just gets you down. I want to look at that because I think it's a sentiment that many of you at home will echo. We've got a spring statement taking place tomorrow. We've had announcements and suggestions today about £2 billion extra funding for social housing. So when you hear the sentiments of Mr. Torbett, and many of you will feel that, do these kind of announcements, the £2 billion, etc., make you feel better? Are these the kind of things that will turn your sentiment around or not? I'll see you in 2.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Do you know what the little green huts dotted around central London are? I went to Grosvenor Gardens earlier this week to visit one. Excuse me, sir. There's a green building there.
Yeah.
Have you any idea what it's for?
No idea. No. What is it? Do you know?
Dotted around central London are elegant green huts, which are as distinctive of the metropolis as the red and blue roundels that stand above underground stations. These little structures are celebrating 150 years of gracing the urban landscape. But I wonder how many people notice them or could tell you what purpose they serve. Do you have the London knowledge to say what their use is? Hello, are you the famous Sue?
I'm Sue, yes. Lovely to meet you.
Oh, lovely to see you. Now, how long have you worked here?
This October will be 22 years.
And what is this?
So this is a taxi hut that was put up in the 1800s. There were several of them plotted around London, but sadly I think there's only about 13 left at the moment.
John, do you find yourself using the taxi shelters very much?
You know, the food's good, it's cheap, and, you know, you've got all of your friends in here and people that you have a little bit of banter with. And, you know, have a nice bit of food and drink and a bit of fun. During the day, if you know, where you can't stop on the streets for parking restrictions, the shelters, we've all got our own parking.
Is it a good amenity for you?
Fantastic. The food, everything is fantastic. The boys, the light-hearted badinage, the entertainment, and most of all, the girls who serve us. How they put up with it, I don't know.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This spring, the Chancellor steps up to the dispatch box to make a statement. But what kind of statement will it be?
Taxes, spending, growth, benefits, cost of living. What's changing? And more importantly, how does it affect you?
Does she have the headroom to make headway?
Will it ease the squeeze or tighten the grip?
Will businesses boom or struggle to survive?
And does the spring statement have real impact, or is it just political posturing?
GB News brings you the analysis that matters. Just what it means for your money, your home, your future.
The Spring Statement 2025, tomorrow on GB News.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry with you till 7 here on Dewbs and Kurt. Alex Dean and Matthew Talbot remain alongside me now. As I went into the break, I was reading you a text from Matt's dad. I'll reread it in case you just tuned in. It says, I've just been reflecting, Matt, what a shambles this country is in. Conservatives were hopeless, now Labour are hopeless too. They both have a go at each other, but they're a shambles, both of them. I've worked since I was 16. I've never worked so hard, and now I've been so worse off than I am now. It just gets you down. What? Oh, well, actually, I was going to ask him because it's his dad.
His dad.
Yeah, go on. I mean, that's your dad. You are a former Labour advisor. Many people will agree with your dad. Talk to me about your thoughts on that.
Well, it upset me. That's my dad. I look up to my dad. I love my dad, and I've watched my mum and dad struggle most of my life, really, to put food on the table. They've both always been in work. They've both got up and grafted.
And are they Labour voters?
No, they don't really vote.
Right.
Mum don't really have time for any sort of politician. She thinks everybody's the same. Dad, I've sort of dragged to the polling booth before now because I've said it's an important thing to do and I think he should vote a certain way. And we spent a lot of time together during the general election. I was up north campaigning and he weren't really... He didn't like anyone, but he said, I think Labour are probably where it's at. And he's fed up. And like he says, he's poorer than he's ever been. He feels like he works harder than he ever has. And I didn't know what else to say to him other than all I can continue to do is call out where I think the party's going wrong, which are the 4 biggest decisions they've made that they don't have a mandate for and weren't in the manifesto.
Just quickly summarise those 4 decisions in your mind.
So the NICS rises wasn't in the manifesto, the cuts to winter fuel allowance, the inheritance tax loophole from the farmers, and now the welfare reforms.
Yeah, look, I think he speaks for a lot of people, and I loved and respected my father in the way that you love and respect yours, and it would have affected me deeply if I'd received a message like that from him. I will say this: in reflection, you look back on the last election, and I think a lot of people will have felt I was a Conservative Party candidate. People will have felt, it was we lost that election, and that we were a tired party. I still think it's better than having a Labour government, but in many ways we deserved to lose that election. But hindsight, the biggest failing of that 14 years was not getting the tax burden down more. And you can get all the fripperies and the personal issues and the fallings out and the reshufflings and the prime ministers. The biggest failing in that 14 years, from a Conservative perspective, was not lowering the tax burden, because it was then inevitably going to go up more under the Labour Party, and it's promptly doing so. Rachel Reeves may or may not make our lives more difficult with this spring statement, but I bet you anything you like it will in the next budget. And the direction of travel is all negative. And the next thing is just a tax on jobs. So you see immediately employers retrenching, people who would have replaced employees not, people who would have made new jobs not. That's going to make things worse for all of us.
I've got a feeling in my water, tell me what you think, that I think very soon we're going to see the return of a 50p tax rate. What do you think?
I think it's extremely likely given the direction of travel, and you might think that that's actually a happy halfway house for the Labour Party between the new wealth tax calls, which Diane Abbott and co are championing, and their current claim, the current desire not to raise taxes. Well, they obviously have. National insurance contribution from employers is a tax on jobs. It effectively means that other people are seeing their ability to... You don't feel the difference, but your employer is paying more for the privilege of employing you. And as a result, they may pay you less. They may hire fewer people. They may give you a smaller pay rise. And so we're already seeing significant taxes on people's lives. But I think a 50p tax, which I would deplore, by the way, no worse message to people than the state's going to take half your money before you get out of the gate. And we think we've seen rich people leaving this country. You ain't seen nothing left yet. But I'm afraid I think you're right.
Yeah, I think I'm right on this, and I share your sentiment. I think it would be an appalling thing to do, and I'll tell you for why. Because when you're asking someone, go to work, whatever you do, go to work and actually give Keir Starmer and co half of your money, and what you'll get in return is pretty much nothing that works. Many of these higher earners, they've got their kids in private school, they've got private health, they don't take very much from the state at all. We're in a situation now where the figures of people entering this country illegally, 30,000 people since Labour took office, is something like 6,000 people this year alone. And I think to come to people and potentially be talking about raising tax rates, whether that's a 50p rate or pulling people up via fiscal drag, while simultaneously expecting British taxpayers to be funding these tens and tens of thousands of people to be in hotels with all of their living costs essentially taken care of, I think it's so insulting, so insulting.
And I think there are two things you could probably do about that. I think the first one, and I will probably say in defence of the party, which I think I do as a rarity these days, but I think both parties were not truthful during the election campaign, and I said that myself during the election campaign, because both parties said there would be no rises in taxes but no cuts to public services. Well, that was never going to be the case regardless of who won. I don't know if we would be in a better position if the Conservatives would have carried on, but we will never know. I think with regards to the concerns of people around immigration, the law is not fit for purpose because the convention was set in 1951. We live in a very different world. The amount of refugees is far greater than what it was in 1951, and the world is a very different place. And at the moment, the only way you can claim asylum, and I mean proper asylum seekers. I want to see a distinction between economic migrants that latch on the back of people and those that really live in fear and persecution. The only way you can legally try and obtain asylum status is to present yourself at English shores. What we should be doing, and I don't think Rwanda would have been the right way, but there's no reason why we can't do deals at certain points, pinch points where, for instance, Syria's in chaos now. It has been for a long time. Why have we not got a checkpoint
So
set
you want
up
us
in
to become
Turkey?
the refugee camp for all the world's conflicts?
That's not what I said. No. I said what I would like to see is a difference. At the moment, we have people coming here who are economic migrants and claiming to be fleeing for asylum for whatever reason. What the French offered to do in 2021 to Boris Johnson was to process people at Calais, and they were going to pay for it. Boris Johnson then fell out with Emmanuel Macron that week over something I can't actually remember, but the Interior Minister said this doesn't work for both of us. Morally, it's wrong. People are dying in the Channel, regardless of whether they're fleeing rightfully or wrongfully. But also, it doesn't look good for either of us. We're getting hit by our public, you're getting hit by yours. People want an end to it. And I think if you could have the ability to process people offshore, not as far away as Rwanda, but you could have checkpoints in Turkey, and that way there's no throwing the passports in the Channel. People are presenting who they are. You could present yourself at an embassy. We don't really allow that. We allowed it briefly during the pulling out of Afghanistan, and that way you would be able to ascertain whether that person has the right or a real case to come and settle in the UK if they had family or otherwise. At the moment, it's a mess. And for those, I feel actually a bit sorry for those that voted for Brexit, because they were promised that, you know, the borders would become under our control. We'd sort it. If you turn on the telly today, it looks worse than it ever has.
Bear in mind that Keir Starmer said he would smash the gangs. If this is what smashing the gangs looks like, I'd hate to see a softer approach. But look, bear in mind, people are able to cross many safe countries and present themselves here as if they had just come off some awful battlefield or come through some awful pogrom and had staggered from their very house in which they had suffered these great, terrible things. You should apply in the safe nations upon which you arrive. And, of course, the people who like to perpetrate this trade in human life say you're entitled to cross as many safe countries as you like, come to the United Kingdom and apply, and they are currently right, which is why the convention is not fit for purpose and why we should change it. But let's be clear and frank too. Whilst it's very eye-catching, the biggest issue in this country isn't illegal migration. The biggest issue is legal migration, which governments of both colours have allowed to happen decade over decade and are changing this country much more profoundly than those who come in small boats, eye-catching though they are.
Well, you tell me what you think to it all at home. Those illegal crossing numbers, by the way, they're 40% up now from the same point this time last year. 40% up. And look, do you know what? If you ask me, in my humble opinion, it's not about kindness. It's not about compassion. We're getting to the point now that this is, in my opinion, an act of national self-harm. I dread to think where it's all going to end. I know lots of you will share my sentiments. Many of you, though, perhaps will disagree. Look, I want to ask you, what is the key thing you want to see in that spring statement? statement after the break. And I also thank you, hallelujah. Some common sense has arrived. I'll tell you about that in 2.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries, all sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Whilst some western parts of Europe are having something a little bit drier than they've seen through recent days, further east it's a very unsettled picture. We have heavy rain across parts of Italy, Greece for example. Totals could build up to around 100–150 millimetres over the Italian mountains, with some intense thunderstorms mixed in as well. Meanwhile, further west, a drier picture, albeit some rain pushing its way into Madeira as we go through tomorrow. Otherwise, like I said, western parts having the best of the dry, sunny weather.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News traffic and travel report.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. There are big problems in Cumbria on the M6. An investigation is blocked off the inside lane from junction 44 to 43 as you head north of Carlisle. And big problems in Oxfordshire for the M40. The motorway remains closed each way. Junction 8, 8 and 9, the Oxford services up to the Bicester turnoff. Investigation work continues following a serious accident late last night where a car overturned. And on the M2 in Kent, the inside lane of 3 is blocked heading towards London from junction 6 to 5. The Faversham Sittingbourne stretch where a car's broken down, causing queues past the scene. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News traffic and travel report.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain. At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new Royal Newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter and get the latest straight to your inbox.
Hello everybody, I'm Michelle Dewberry. This is Dewbs & Co with you till 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, Alex Dean, the political consultant, and Matthew Torbett, the former Labour advisor. Lots of love and support for what your dad said. Many of you echoing that sentiment of just feeling completely lost and in despair with the state of the nation at the moment. I asked you, just give me the one thing that you want to see most in the spring statement. I'm going to ask my panel that in a few minutes, but many of you have got in touch with the same answer. You're getting in touch with me saying you want them to all resign and for there to be a general election. That's what you want the announcement to be tomorrow. I don't want to burst your bubble or disappoint you all too much, but I really don't think that is going to happen. But look, I'll tell you something that did make me happy today, ladies and gents. Yes, you can tell I'm quite excited about this one because one of the things I feel passionately about, you might have noticed if you're a regular viewer, is safety and fairness when it comes to us females. This is a topic that affects all of us women and anyone that's got a daughter, a granddaughter, a niece and so on. Today, common sense, I would suggest, has finally prevailed. The World Athletics Association has announced that they will introduce mandatory sex testing for anyone competing in female competitions. Of course, Sebastian Coe is the president of this organisation. I'll cross now to the Olympic legend, Sharon Davies. Sharon, good evening to you. This is non-invasive screening. We're talking about female athletes having to do it once, just once in their lifetime. It's not regular and all the rest of it. And it's trying to make sure that it's no athletes that are going through kind of male development would be put through into the female category. How do you feel about this?
Well, first of all, obviously extremely pleased. It's something I've been trying to get done for the last 10 years when the IOC changed the rules in 2015 and basically threw women's sport totally under the woke PC bus. On no peer-reviewed science whatsoever, and there's never been any peer-reviewed science ever in the world to show that we can remove male puberty advantage, and that's the whole reason why we have male and female races. And the other one to sort of, to actually show people that it's ridiculous to say this is intrusive because it's not. It's a cotton wool bud to the inside of your cheek. It takes about 10 seconds. I had one way back in 1976 when I went to my first Olympic Games. And as you rightly said, Michelle, you never need another one because human beings cannot change their biological sex. So that's it, 10 seconds of a cheek swab. And it's basically checking for the SRY gene, which turns on male development. But what's also quite important to understand is this isn't just about post-puberty. This is all males, because actually there's always an advantage. We can show that even in primary school children, little boys tend to run about 5% faster and they jump and throw much further than little girls do. So we also have a Q angle, which is our angle from our hips to our knees. That's wider in a female for obvious reasons for childbirth. That puts more pressure on our knees, gives us more knee injuries, but allows males to have more cadence because obviously they're directly above their legs and their quads and their the hamstrings, etc. So there's lots of benefits to being male that you can't remove by reducing testosterone, even if it was all the way through puberty.
But, I mean, this has also had a lot of criticism. Some people say, well, this is discriminatory to athletes that might have complex biological profiles, as they would call it. What would you say to that?
Well, it depends what you're calling complex biological profile. So if you were Caster Semenya, for example, you're biologically male, you're 46 ARD. So that means that you went through male puberty, you are male, but when you were born, sadly, you were picked up and they couldn't see your very small penis and your testes were internal. So they went, oh, this must be a female, we'll put a female on your birth certificate. But you're biologically male. And if that person had been born in this country, if there'd been any ambiguity, they would have given them a blood test and then known straight away. So that's also what it will stop. It will stop that the DSD, the male DSD athletes from being able to compete in the female category, which is what we saw in the boxing last summer, which was so horrendous. I mean, that was seriously, a very, very big accident waiting to happen and showed how ridiculous we've got. I mean, a simple sex screening test once in your lifetime, and we can protect the female category for all our little girls and all our grown-up girls. We're talking about 50% of the world here.
Yeah, and what about, I've seen other critics say, well, hang on, it's a bit undignified. If a person believes themselves to be female, you've got some random fella coming towards her with a cotton swab wanting to be inside her mouth. Some women or some people might say, no, thank you, I don't want to do that.
Well, I'm not quite sure how just taking a swab on the inside of your mouth is undignified, but what I would say is when you actually go to the Olympics, you have to agree to WADA doping, and that's pretty undignified. They'll stand and watch you have a pee. So if you have a problem with a cotton swab, you've got no chance in the Olympic Games when it comes to drug testing.
And last question to you, Sharon. Some people say, well, hang on a second, didn't they used to have this sex testing previously and they got rid of it?
Yeah, they did. So they brought it in 1968. I had mine in 1976. It was there for over 30 years. And at the Atlantic Olympic Games in 96, they asked the female athletes if they wished for it to carry on. 84% said, yes, please. And the IOC stopped it.
Interesting stuff. Sharon Davies, thank you very much for your insight on that today. Matthew Talbot, your thoughts?
I'm not against it in principle, I suppose. If you look at the case of Caster Semenya, which everyone will sort of know about, I'm not sure if measuring testosterone is always the most accurate way of defining somebody's gender. I think totally understand not allowing trans people or those that have undergone operations and otherwise to partake in sport. But the way that Caster Semenya was caught out is they measure your nanomoles within your blood, which is 1/1000th of a mole, the unit of measurement. So you can have 4.99 nanomoles of testosterone in a vial of blood, but if you're 5.1, you're over the limit, essentially. And there's the thing about sport. I used to play football at a decent level growing up, despite not being that good myself. But sport is full of, for want of a better term, freaks of nature. You know, the fact that we had Michael Phelps, one of the most ridiculous Olympian swimmers there's ever been. Nobody was asking him to lower his testosterone. He just happened to be an unbelievable athlete. So I think it depends. And I remember the scapegoating of Caster Semenya. If a swab is not seen as enough, how long would it be until we're, wanting to inspect underpants or anything else, really? That would be my concern.
Blimey, what do you do for a living? I inspect underpants. I imagine stranger things have happened. Look, Sebco, he reckons, he was asked, do you think this might be legally challenged? And he says at the end of the day, they're prepared to fight this essentially all the way.
But this could make life a great deal easier for people concerned. I mean, at the Olympics, we were treated to the unedifying spectacle of what looked an awful lot like a bloke punching the hell out of a woman. Now, that person went through a great number of allegations being made against them, including one of the boxing authorities. Well, if they submit to this sort of testing, presumably, if that person's in fact female and there was no doubt about it, it would be swiftly confirmed and it would ensure such allegations were no longer made. Most of these things are not actually about the Caster Semenya type individual, though I think her reading was far higher than the 0.1 over that you're mentioning. I think most of the concerns here, let's be frank about it, are about transsexual people. And it seems to me that there is no place for men in women's sports any more than there is place for men in women's spaces. And I think it's all to the good that this has happened. I'll also say, by the way, how much I admire Sharon Davies.
Oh, me too.
She has, the things that woman has been through for saying what she believes and standing up for it, the abuse that she gets online is absolutely extraordinary. A news publication in my industry was asking people what they thought, who they thought the best campaigner in this country was at the moment, and I said Sharon Davies. I think what she has gone through and the bravery with which she's done it is fantastic.
One of my viewers has got in touch and said, I so wish that I was sitting on that panel. Can you tell Matthew Talbot that a man with 4.9999 testosterone is 3 times the upper limit of a biological woman? His argument, they say, is absolutely ridiculous. Well, there you go. I'll pass that message on. Look, at the end of the day, I feel passionate, and I make no apology for feeling passionate about this. Imagine having a daughter, a granddaughter, someone that's worked their bits off, literally, to compete at a decent level, and then get a man in that category who I would regard, actually, as being a cheat and robbing that child, essentially, from that win and from that opportunity. I hope, ladies and gents, that this is the start of a turning point, because I would like to see the likes of the FA. I mean, I've ranted about those guys before, where you've got teenage girls that are getting match bans because they have the audacity to look at a bearded player and ask, is that a male player? They have found themselves with match bans. I've got to say also, it would be great to see, wouldn't it, other established athletes, people like the Lionesses, perhaps coming out and talking about fairness in women's sports. I can but live in hope. Look, get in touch and tell me your thoughts on that one. Spring statement, what's the one thing you'd like to see in that? I asked you earlier on.
It's not going to happen, but I would love to see tax breaks to companies. Yes, that is a left-wing individual calling for tax breaks on companies that employed former criminals. I think you will never, ever crack down on the rise in prison places that we're going to continue with the need to keep creating unless you give people who've committed lower-level crime an opportunity to redeem themselves in that James Timpson-like mould.
Well, loads of companies are doing it, hiring ex-cons already without those tax breaks.
Not enough, and that's why I think you have to offer the carrot and the stick.
I believe in the empowering element of the dignity of work in the rehabilitative process, and that's a policy I would support. But I'm going to be realistic. I still don't think we're going to get this. I'm going to be realistic and say what I would like. I would like the Labour Party to admit they got it wrong on the NICS employers' rise and reverse it. It's not some seismic thing. It would just be taking it back down to where it was before. We've seen the shocking effect it's had on the employment market, the freezing that it's had on new hiring. It comes into force in April. They could admit they've got it wrong and reverse it before it even begins. I think the unleashing of positivity in our economy will be remarkable, and the Chancellor will be thanked for it. One, for the economic impact, and two, for being a grown-up who admitted when they got something wrong. People want to see that from our politicians. The beauty of this is you get to admit you're wrong before the policy came into effect. This is the only time she can do it. She should do it now.
Well, if you are sitting there with high expectations for the spring statement as well, don't forget we have got a live studio audience here tomorrow. We're going to have a live audience. We're going to be going through all the twists and all the turns. And coming up after the break, if you do want to join me, I'll give you the details as to how you can do it. And I'll also talk to you about role models, toxic masculinity. I'll see you in 2.
Hello there, good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Turning chilly under clear skies tonight, it's likely we'll see a fair amount of mist and fog. Some drizzle to start the evening too across parts of the southeast, all thanks to this cold front eventually clearing its way towards the southeast, allowing a ridge of high pressure to build. So that means it's going to be a largely settled night to come. But with light winds, clear skies, it's likely we'll see some mist and fog by the time we reach the morning, particularly around North Sea coasts, past parts of East Anglia and across parts of the south too. Could see quite a murky morning, but largely dry, though we can't rule out a few showers just skirting the far north of Scotland. Turning chilly under those clear skies too, perhaps even some light patchy frost in rural spots. So across parts of the south, quite a murky start, quite grey skies around, some mist and fog, which may be quite dense at times and perhaps a little bit slow to clear. Similar across Northern Ireland, parts of northern England, some patchy fog, also some frost in places. And across Scotland, still fairly dry. Once again, there is a risk of some mist and fog to start and just a few showers, particularly across parts of Shetland, maybe even some longer spells of rain by the morning too. Once any mist and fog clears, particularly across the south, it will lead to quite a bright day. Plenty of sunny spells and largely dry too, though once again just the odd shower skirting the Northern Isles. And we'll start to see cloud thicken across the very far northwest too, perhaps even some light outbreaks of rain just starting to push into western Scotland later and turning quite blustery here. But in the sunshine, highs of 17, possibly 18 degrees Celsius, so warm spring sunshine to come into tomorrow. For Thursday, though, it's starting to turn more unsettled. Cloud and outbreaks of rain sinking its way southwards across Northern Ireland, Scotland, later into northern parts of England and Wales. Across the very far south and southeast, that's where we'll see the best of the brightness. And once again, feeling warm in the sunshine, but unsettled on Friday and Saturday with showers, longer spells of rain, and feeling a little bit cooler too. Bye-bye.
This spring, the Chancellor steps up to the dispatch box to make a statement. But what kind of statement will it be?
Taxes, spending, growth, benefits, cost of living. What's changing? And more importantly, how does it affect you?
Does she have the headroom to make headway?
Will it ease the squeeze or tighten the grip?
Will businesses boom or struggle to survive?
And does the spring statement have real impact, or is it just political posturing?
GB News brings you the analysis that matters. Just what it means for your money, your home, your future.
The Spring Statement 2025, tomorrow on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, everybody. This is Dewbs & Co with me, Michelle Dewberry. Until 7, I've got Alex Dean and I've got Matt Talbot remaining alongside me. Now, there's been a lot of conversation, hasn't there, about so-called toxic masculinity. I actually feel sorry for many guys in society at the moment, particularly young men. They seem to be getting a bit of a battering, don't they? Well, anyway, at Nottingham Fire and Rescue Service, they teamed up with a charity called Hard As Nails. They painted, the male firefighters painted their nails. They wanted to encourage debate about gender identity and toxic masculinity. Anyway, loads of people jumped in, had a bit of a go at them, saying it was all work, it was all a bit ridiculous, and so on. And the reason I picked this story particularly is because I had two men on the panel. I know, Matt, you have been on the wrong side of the tracks at some points in your life, as have I, so I'm not judging. This whole notion that these young men are getting influenced and they're lacking father figures, they need stronger role models, they're all toxic, they don't like women and all the rest of it. What do you say to that?
I mean, as a sort of straight white guy that grew up working class, I've never felt under attack. I've always felt the world was a little bit unfair because, you know, you're born into whatever circumstances you are. I'm unsure if we've got a toxic masculinity problem. What I think we do have in this country, and, you know, probably elsewhere, is an issue with misogyny. Totally. If you look at the rates of violence against women and girls, you look at the UN research that say 97% of women have faced harassment on the street, catcalls, whatever else. The low level of convictions of rapes, which is below 2% for people that come forward and women that don't feel believed. And I think that is a misogyny issue. Whether that plays into toxic masculinity or whatever definition you want to give it is another story. I think the role models conversation is interesting. The Centre for Social Justice obviously did a study recently in which 2.5 million children in this country don't have a male role model. And I got to thinking about it, thinking, well, you know, I didn't really feel like I had a role model. But actually, to go back to my dad, we've never had a conversation on a deep level, to be honest with you, unless it was about football. But I grew up watching him go to work every day. And therefore, I had a positive idea of what it was that you had to go to work, play by the rules. I had many football coaches I looked up to. And I think we have a vacuum of leadership in this country across all manner of levels, to be honest, where people think, well, what's the point? What's the point in playing by the rules? And you throw social media into that mix as well. I think you could speak about this for hours, to be honest with you, but I think it's more misogyny than toxic masculinity that we have an issue with.
The trouble is, it seems to me, that the problems being identified are in no way connected to the pseudo-solution that is being touted, which is plainly just performative nonsense about firemen painting their nails. You got this performative nonsense of men who didn't paint their nails before and won't do again after this. It's supposedly changing anything relevant about masculinity or anything else. I mean, let's turn it the flip way around. Let's imagine someone didn't like to participate and then somebody's house is on fire and they say, I'm sorry, but before you put that out, can you show me your fingernails or let me know if you took part in the Hard As Nails painting exercise, because I'm not sure I want you to put my house out or cut me out of this car on the motorway. It's just guff, isn't it?
Do you think there is this point there that guys don't talk about the mental health and they struggle? I mean, obviously, suicide, I think it's the biggest killer of men. I think it's under the age of 50.
Yes, and that is profound, and it has nothing to do with firemen painting their nails.
What do you make to all of that at home? Get in touch and tell me your thoughts. And don't forget, as well, I mentioned earlier on that you can come and join the audience in tomorrow's show. It's going to be a spring statement special, the budget that's not a budget. We'll be getting into all of that, so you can find the details on the screen. You can get your telephone out and you can scan the QR code. And if you're sitting there thinking, I'm driving, Michelle, what do you want me to do? Well, what I want you to do is when you've got home and you're in a safe place, have a look on the website and all the details will be there. Let me very quickly ask you this. I've only got a few minutes left. The social housing, there was an announcement, a suggestion today, 18,000 new social houses, £2 billion. Your thoughts?
I'm all for having good social housing in principle, which should involve, A, the right to buy, so that people can get on the housing ladder and own their own homes, and B, should involve being direct about the fact that if the state is going to help you live somewhere, it doesn't mean you get to say exactly where it is. Here we are in London. Zone 1 has a huge amount of social housing. If we, over time, decanted that population and realised the value of the land with commercial and corporate enterprises, you could take that money and buy new, better social housing outside of some of the most valuable property in the whole of the United Kingdom, rather than just asking the taxpayer to foot the bill.
Yeah, I don't think there should be an entitlement. I think the idea that it will sweeten the pill tomorrow won't work. They're talking about, is it 18 or 19,000 by 2029? If you look at charities like Crisis and other homelessness charities, they'll tell you we need 90,000 per year just to fit the current crisis at the moment. So it's a drop in the ocean. I welcome social housing. I think they actually describe it as affordable housing, which is a different prospect altogether. But it is piecemeal for me.
And this notion, so if you're not in London, Zone 1 just basically means it's kind of central London, obviously. And a lot of working people wouldn't be able to live in Zone 1.
There are people who could not afford to live there. There are people who work in our hospitals, who work in our fire stations, who work in the police and so forth, who would not, starting as a soldier in our, sent abroad to fight and perhaps die for us. You could not afford to live in the properties that people are being put up in social housing. And my point is, if you move that out, you can probably get a 2-for-1. It's probably so valuable, some of the land, that you could house 2 people outside of Zone 1 for what you're paying to house them inside. And you get a regeneration of that Zone 1 land, and you get new social housing outside too. For me, it's a no-brainer.
Is it a no-brainer for you at home? I've got to say that all of this, coming back to that toxic masculinity situation, I always feel with this stuff, what people do is they pick the low-hanging fruits, don't they? They want to talk about violence against women and girls, which I, of course, passionately want to see stop as well. But it's all too easy, isn't it, to take the little white working-class scrawny kid and stick him on Netflix and point fingers in that direction and all the rest of it. But no one really seems to tackle one of the real risks, or one of the big risks, should I say, in society, which is you are importing at a rate of knots. Goodness only knows which men from goodness only knows which cultures, who often the cultures there do not respect women in the same way that we would appreciate being respected and treated in this country. But ladies and gents, that's a little bit too funny a subject for many politicians, isn't it? So let's focus on the little white scrawny working class kid who pretty much is getting battered in so many different aspects of his life already. Anyway, that's all we've got time for. I've enjoyed this conversation tonight, gents. Thank you very much for your company. Thank you as well at home. There's lots of support again for your dad. Lots of you saying that you do just feel you don't know who you would vote for in a general election tomorrow. There isn't a general election tomorrow, but there is a spring statement tomorrow. And as I've just said, live studio audience. I can't wait. Let's unpick it together. Let's celebrate together if there's some good stuff, or let's perhaps mourn the bad stuff together as well. Have a good night. I'll see you tomorrow night.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Turning chilly under clear skies tonight, it's likely we'll see a fair amount of mist and fog. Some drizzle to start the evening too across parts of the southeast, all thanks to this cold front eventually clearing its way towards the southeast, allowing a ridge of high pressure to build. So that means it's going to be a largely settled night to come. But with light winds, clear skies, it's likely we'll see some mist and fog by the time we reach the morning, particularly around North Sea coasts, past parts of East Anglia and across parts of the south too. Could see quite a murky morning, but largely dry, though we can't rule out a few showers just skirting the far north of Scotland. Turning chilly under those clear skies too, perhaps even some light patchy frost in rural spots. So across parts of the south, quite a murky start, quite grey skies around, some mist and fog, which may be quite dense at times and perhaps a little bit slow to clear. Similar across Northern Ireland, parts of northern England, some patchy fog, also some frost in places. And across Scotland, still fairly dry. Once again, there is a risk of some mist and fog to start and just a few showers, particularly across parts of Shetland, maybe even some longer spells of rain by the morning too. Once any mist and fog clears, particularly across the south, it will lead to quite a bright day. Plenty of sunny spells and largely dry too, though once again just the odd shower skirting the Northern Isles. And we'll start to see cloud thicken across the very far northwest too, perhaps even some light outbreaks of rain just starting to push into western Scotland later and turning quite blustery here. But in the sunshine, highs of 17, possibly 18 degrees Celsius, so warm spring sunshine to come into tomorrow. For Thursday, though, it's starting to turn more unsettled. Cloud and outbreaks of rain sinking its way southwards across Northern Ireland, Scotland, later into northern parts of England and Wales. Across the very far south and southeast, that's where we'll see the best of the brightness. And once again, feeling warm in the sunshine, but unsettled on Friday and Saturday with showers, longer spells of rain, and feeling a little bit cooler too. Bye-bye.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day.